All right. Time for another FTP Podcast. We're going to spend a little bit of time going over the landscape for the NBA playoffs right now. We've narrowed the field to 4 teams. We'll take a look at the matchups and some possible final storylines. So all that coming up. We'll take a look at the Everett Golson train. It should be coming to an end soon. Obviously, Tom Brady got his ruling this week, and I am not even going to touch on that. That's a whole nother 20-minute conversation on its own. No time to fit it in. All right, let's get this thing started the right way.
This is the FTP Podcast.
All right, let's start off with Everett Golson. Obviously, he's been on his, you could call it recruiting train. And I love it. You know, a lot of people have been upset saying it's like free agency and like he's in the NFL and teams are trying to recruit him and buy him, but I have no problem with this. The kid's gone out. He's performed pretty well at times. Obviously, he's been a little bit inconsistent. That's why he lost his starting job. Then there were the academic issues as well. But when he's been on the field consistently, there have been times where he looked like a very good quarterback prospect. And if I'm a head coach and looking at him out there and I'm saying, you know, I think I can get him to be more consistent and to come in and help my team, I'm going to go out and recruit him too. Personally, I think it's interesting. I think it's great for the player. I think it's good for the sport as well because obviously all these great teams are vying for this quarterback help, and he's going to be able to pick the team that he wants to go to. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the right way to go about things, but I think it's interesting. I love sitting here watching it and talking about it. He's supposed to be announcing his choice tomorrow at some point. But will that actually happen? Who knows? You know, they've been talking about schools from South Carolina to UGA. Most of the SEC schools have been in on it. I mean, as an LSU fan, I was kind of hoping that they'd kind of get in on the bandwagon, but they haven't been one of the schools that he mentioned or that has been mentioned connected to him. So more than likely, they're out of the running on that. But I think it'd be very interesting to see him go to in Alabama. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but I'd like to see him in UGA. I could see him as a Bulldog. That could work out for them. I think that would be good for both parties. UGA has some talent, and I think, on his own, he's shown that he's pretty exciting when he gets it on. Now, obviously, he has those same turnover issues that a guy like Jameis Winston had last year, and that's what ended up getting him pulled along the line, just the rash of turnovers, but he's still a great quarterback. I think he's obviously one of the upper echelon of quarterbacks in the college football world. And, unquestioned, he is the top, available prospect, which I personally think is ridiculous because Ohio State has such a glutton of quarterbacks. I cannot believe that at the very least, if the other two wanted to stay, if Cardell and Barrett both wanted to stay, I cannot believe that Braxton would not up and transfer. Now, let me I guess I'm going to get back on my soapbox a little bit here because I was in the group of almost saying, you know, Cardell should have cashed in his stock while it was hot after his couple of game streak, the national championship. I'm a big for, NFL draft guys, NBA draft guys. When your stock is hot, you buy. You buy now. Go in, let them take a chance on you saying, well, we haven't seen a lot of them, but what we have seen has been impressive. What we have seen is a winner. What we have seen is a guy who's fought adversity and all these different things, instead of giving them the opportunity to pick and choose at your game, like, say, a Matt Barkley, who if he would have come out a year earlier, probably would have been the top quarterback in the draft that year, but instead went back to school and fell, and now, he hasn't been heard of since. He's riding the bench with Tim Tebow in Philadelphia right now. So, obviously, that didn't work out so well for him. I'm a big believer in cash in while the iron's hot. Now, I'm not saying that Cardell necessarily should have been the one to leave. I can understand why he went back to school. Obviously, I'm all for him wanting to get his degree. Let's go for it. And the competition between him and Barrett is pretty equal. That one makes sense to me. Both of them have performed well. Obviously, Barrett did it on a longer basis than Jones, but Jones did it on a higher pedestal, being that he did in the playoffs. But Braxton Miller, at the very least, this is your last year of eligibility. You're a guy that's been talked about as an NFL prospect your entire time in college. You clearly have options at other positions just based on his size and athletic ability alone. But he wants to play quarterback, and he's not going to get the opportunity to play. Let's be serious. If Braxton Miller beats out Cardell and Barrett for the starting job at Ohio State, I think the world will be stunned. And I'm not taking anything away from Braxton here. But those two are both as much more prototypical quarterbacks. They have a little bit better arms and accuracy than him. Now, he brings obviously some other things to the field a little bit more than the other two of them. Not saying that taking anything athletically away from them either, but Braxton is just a different guy, and I think if he would have made himself available for transfer, he would have been on the same recruiting train as Golson, and it would have been a lot more interesting. Teams would have been vying for the two of those guys, almost saying, if I can't get one, I'm going to get the other one, and it would have ramped things up that much more. And I think it just blows my mind that those three guys are all going back to Ohio State, and I think that just speaks calibers of the quality of coach and program that Urban Meyer has built there, because to convince those three guys to all come in and fight for a job, I mean, obviously they have love for their school and their program, but to some extent in the back of their head, especially Braxton, a guy who this is his last year, NFL aspirations on the line here. If he doesn't play at another position, if he doesn't see the field this year, I mean, it's going to be a real hard stretch for him to find camp invites, let alone, I mean, the dream of being drafted is gone at that point if he doesn't see the field at all, because he's solely a quarterback and he's behind these two guys. And, I mean, splitting time at quarterback is great and all, but seriously, I mean, a split-time quarterback, that's still a long shot for you, honestly. Like I said, I thought Cardell should have cashed it in. I think he would have definitely gone high, especially with the crop of quarterbacks we had in the draft this year. But, hey, I completely understand him wanting to get his degree and get it now, and I have no problem with that. I say, go on, graduate, buddy, and do your thing, and, the NFL will wait. Will you still be drafted as high as you probably would have went? Probably not. But who's to say? He could go in, he might see the field, and he could end up being a first-round pick. As opposed to this year when he came out, he probably would have been a second or third. So you never know. I think I do appreciate his decision going back to school, but like I said, I'm all for draft guys cashing in while the iron's hot. If your stock is high, you go. Take the money and run, and then, take all the big leagues. The NFL has back-to-school programs to help guys that leave early get their degrees and things like that. You do that. Get your degree in the off-season. I have no problem with you wanting to graduate, but the money that's being offered to you to go and the opportunity that's being offered to you and a team that's going to want you, it may not wait for you, because once teams gather more film on you, they start to nitpick. And I'm going to go back to Matt Barkley on this situation. At one point, he was discussed as a number 1 overall pick. He went back to school. Team started to nitpick. And then he fell and fell and fell and fell. And now he's in the NFL and hasn't seen a regular season game. And it's not considered, I mean, every year since he's been in Philadelphia said, well, we want to trade him. And he's still sitting there. Does that say anything about the kind of stock he has hanging around? Now, I'm not saying that he would have been successful had he come out, but I'm saying that if he would have come out, it would have been a better situation for him, I guess, at least financially. Not success-wise on the field, but, hey, if these guys, get your money. That's what I'm saying. Get your money where you can get it. All right, we'll switch gears right after the breaks and take a look at the NBA playoff landscape. Stay tuned.
You are now listening to the sounds of the FTP Podcast.
All right, let's get into the NBA playoffs. Before I even dive into the remaining teams, I want to give a shout out to the man behind all of this. The oh-so-fearless leader. His Bulls fell, and, obviously he's heard about it, and but that's okay. They gave it a good fight. D. Rose looked good. Obviously, you have some problems, I know, with some other guys on the team, but we're not going to get into that. Obviously, they're gone now. So let's take a look at the championship games, matchups that we have left. We're talking about the Cleveland Cavs and the Hawks in the Eastern Conference. What did I just say? Did I just say the Hawks are in the Eastern Conference Finals? I'm a guy who hasn't been a believer in the Hawks this whole season. I mean, I was on record when they were rolling during the regular season saying, this is a fluke. They're a team that's going to die in the playoffs. Because normally these long rotations just don't survive the NBA playoffs. The NBA playoffs is all about shortening your rotation, normally getting your best guys on the court, consistently and having guys play in higher minutes. Like, long rotations normally work out during the regular season. I mean, we saw the Denver Nuggets a couple of years ago with those long rotations. Just a bunch of good guys, no great guys, just a bunch of good guys survived during the regular season into the playoffs multiple years, and in the playoffs they were just ousted consistently. And I was expecting to see the same thing from the Hawks, and I'm not taking anything away. I love Jeff Teague, and Korver's been shooting the lights out all season. But outside of that, I mean, they have some good guys, but no great guy. And in the NBA, historically, in order to be successful in the playoffs, in order to win a championship, you need that superstar, that team ascending player. And I mean, in recent history, the only team that really has been able to do it without that is like the Detroit Pistons those years. And they just did it on defense and just sheer grit alone. But the Hawks have impressed me. They've gotten this far, and now they're facing off with the Cavs. Now, I did not expect them to knock off the Wizards. Once John Wall came back, I thought that was going to be series over. But thanks to a couple of definitely interesting endings to some games, and Paul Pierce, the truth is they sent the Wizards home. Yeah. Well, now it's the Hawks and it's the Cavs. LeBron James versus the whole Hawks team. I mean, the best I can do here is this matchup will definitely be something to watch. I think the Hawks, just because their rotation has worked, I will give them credit where credit is due. Their rotation has worked. It's gotten them this far clearly. And obviously the Cavs have a bit of a different mentality. They have that shorter rotation that I was speaking of that's normally more successful. They have that superstar player. They have not one superstar, but two superstars, and Kyrie Irving and LBJ. And if Kevin Love was still healthy, I'd almost say they have three. But the Cavs, I have to expect them to come out of this one. The Hawks, like I said, I haven't been a believer all year. They still haven't made me a believer. Even though they ousted the Wizards and all, I'm still not a believer here. I'm not. I can't do it. I'm just not full on that Hawks train. Jeff Teague, great guy. Horford, great guy. Korver, awesome shooter. Carroll, great player. But I just don't see them being able to put it all together to knock off what the Cavs are going to bring to the table. When I think one of the things, the biggest knock on LeBron James the majority of his career was he was never the guy. And then against the Bulls, when he took that shot at the end of the game, and that buzzer beater, and he nailed it. And after the game, he said, the play was for me to inbound the ball. And I told Coach, no, give me the ball. Champions want the ball in their hands when the game is on the line. And that's the only problem I've ever had with LeBron, is I've never just heard him outright say, you know what, I don't care what the situation is, give me the ball, I'm going to take care of it. That's what I've been waiting for. That's what I feel like elevates you into, now there are legitimate conversations. You can make a legitimate argument of Jordan or LeBron. Not to say that you couldn't make a legitimate argument before, but Jordan had that grit. He had that mentality, the same mentality that Kobe has. In the fourth quarter, I don't care who's on the court with me, give me the ball. Give me the ball. Game on the line, give it to me. I'm going to make something happen. Or we going to lose. Or I'm going to go down shooting regardless. And when I heard him say that, I think something finally clicked in my head to say, you know what? This guy's legit. So I'm picking the Cavs here. I think the Cavs are going to knock off the Hawks. Not to say that the Hawks aren't going to get a game or two. I think the Cavs take care of them in 5 or 6. 5 or 6. No way 7. If it goes to 7 games, I will be completely stunned, and I will have to admit that I've completely underestimated the Hawks once again. But obviously, all of my Atlanta folks will not be happy to hear that. All right, moving on to the Western Conference Finals. That would give us the Warriors and the Rockets. I mean, wow, I'm hard-pressed to go against this Rockets team after the comeback that they had to pull against the Clippers. I mean, the Clippers had them dead to rights, but they pulled it out some way. I mean, there's talent all over this Houston team. I mean, I'm a huge James Harden guy. Dwight Howard along with him on that team. It just gives them something, and not to mention Josh Smith is a great player in his own right. And matching them off against this Warriors team that's been clicking on all cylinders all year long, I think this is definitely going to be an interesting matchup. I mean, it's hard to go against a hot hand like Houston. And, normally going into a 7-game series and then coming out to have to face a rested team is a bad thing. But I think the way Houston had to make it through to survive that series, I think it's actually going to play to their favor. I think they're hot right now. I think they're rolling. Their confidence is high. And, in sports, an overused term is momentum. But I think right now they have the momentum. And obviously going into this series, normally I'd pick the Warriors, but just because of the way the Rockets had to make it in, it's giving me a moment of pause. Because I think momentum is an overutilized term, but I think it's also an underrealized term in sports. Because people say, oh, momentum's not real. No, momentum is very real. Because part of the game is believing that you can do it. And once you're doing things well, it's very easy for you to start to believe. It's just like in baseball, a guy can be in a hitting slump. It's the same thing. It's all mental. And that's where that momentum kicks in. You have one good play, and all of a sudden you're like, I got their number. And then you have another good play, and you're like, I really got them. And after that, you're just rolling. And it just becomes something they have to find a way to recapture that momentum to get you to give them that pause and almost respect them again. Obviously, the Rockets haven't done anything on the court against the Warriors yet. But I think right now, they are riding cloud 9. And I think they have momentum in their favor. I think they're going to go in and they're going to give the Warriors some major trouble in this series if they can capitalize early on this momentum. If they can win game 1, if they win game 1, rolling with this momentum, I'm picking the Rockets the rest of the way. I think game 1 is almost a must-win for the Warriors to take the Rockets down a peg. Because mentally, if they win that first game, they realize how close they are, and they realize that they can do this and believe in it. And I think James Harden elevates his game when he kind of sees something, and I think that will definitely change the impact of the finals. Oh my God, if the Rockets make it after that series against the Clippers, oh goodness. But like I said, I think game 1 will tell the whole tale for them. If the Rockets win, I pick them to win the series. If the Warriors win, I still think it takes them 6 games to get it done. But if the Warriors win game 1, I think they stall the Rockets up enough to knock them off in 6. So that would give us a finals matchup of the Warriors versus the Cavs. So I think a Warriors-Cavs matchup would definitely be interesting. I think the Warriors definitely have the best chance of giving the Cavs a run for their money and knocking them off. But I'm not going to dive too far into the finals. Obviously, we still got a long way to go to get to that. Thanks for tuning in again. Check us out on social media, Twitter, SoundCloud, YouTube. I appreciate it. Till next time, deuces.